Imagine your new vegan lipstick goes completely viral. Like, you sell 50,000 units in 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Right. It is your absolute dream scenario.
Yeah.
But then you realize your manufacturer's supply chain just snapped under the sudden volume.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
You can't actually trace those supposedly organic ingredients back to their source, and you are suddenly staring down a multi-million-dollar product recall.
It's brutal. That is the harsh kind of mechanical reality happening behind the scenes of those glossy marketing campaigns. Because a great idea simply isn't enough anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Who actually manufactures your product, how they trace the materials down to the molecular level, and how they physically scale up their assembly lines.
It dictates everything.
Exactly. It dictates whether you build a global sensation or experience a very public, very costly failed launch.
And that is exactly why we are taking a deep dive today into this really comprehensive buyer's guide. It's authored by Laurent Fabian over at Ingredientsage, and it's titled How to Choose Private Label Makeup Manufacturers.
It's a fantastic resource.
It really is. So our mission for you today is to decode this incredibly complex world. We are going to contrast the different ways you can partner with a manufacturer, pinpoint the absolute best strategy for a startup that wants to launch a clean beauty brand fast, and build a concrete blueprint for how to scale your capacity.
We have to talk about modeling the hidden costs, too.
Oh, for sure. The hidden costs that bankrupt so many founders.
Yeah, because understanding the architecture of how these products are actually brought into existence, it really is non-negotiable if you want your brand to survive.
Right.
And before you can sell a single tube of serum, you have to decide the fundamental mechanism of how it is going to be made.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, according to Fabian's guide, you are essentially looking at three main models of manufacturing engagement. You've got full service, co-formulation, and packaging customization.
Got it. And choosing between those three models pretty much dictates your entire operational and financial future, right?
100%.
I actually like to think of this like the housing market.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, deciding on your manufacturing model is basically deciding how you want to buy a house. So full service is like hiring an architect and a general contractor to do a custom build from scratch.
Right.
The manufacturer handles the chemical formulation, the mixing, the packaging, literally everything. It's going to be uniquely yours, but you are going to be waiting a very long time to move in.
Yeah, you'll be dealing with like endless zoning meetings and structural testing before the foundation is even poured.
Exactly.
That is a perfect framework, because with full service, that zoning phase is the extensive upfront feasibility work. You're paying for chemists to develop a liquid from nothing, which means iterative lab work, countless stability failures, and massive lead times.
That's a huge commitment.
It is. Then you have the second model, which is co-formulation.
Right. So sticking with the housing analogy, co-formulation is like buying a fixer-upper. You, the brand, you bring the base concept or an initial recipe, and you dictate the renovations. You're knocking down walls to get the exact finish you want, but the trade-off is that you have to be at the job site every single day, just, covered in drywall dust.
Covered in drywall dust, exactly. And in the cosmetic world, that drywall dust is the physical back and forth of color matching.
Oh, wow.
Tweaking the viscosity so the lotion doesn't separate, adjusting the pH levels. I mean, it unlocks unique differentiation in the market, but it demands an incredibly tight, ongoing collaboration with their lab technicians.
You're truly in the trenches with them.
You are.
Yeah.
Which leaves the third option, which is packaging customization.
Okay, the third house.
Right. This is where you utilize the manufacturer's existing pre-tested stock formulations, but you customize the labels, the shades, and the exterior design.
So this is buying a move-in ready spec home.
Basically, yeah.
The floor plan is set, the plumbing already works, but you get to paint the walls, choose the landscaping, and hang your own art to make the space yours.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, choosing which of those three houses to buy completely alters your risk profile.
Makes sense.
The guide heavily emphasizes that you cannot just guess which one fits your timeline. You have to ask prospective partners for a sample project plan right up front.
Like before you sign anything.
Before you sign anything.
So I'm assuming that means looking past just a simple calendar of dates, right? Like a real project plan would need to show me the structural risks of each approach side by side.
Yes, precisely. You are demanding a document that outlines specific operational milestones, like exactly what chemical inputs are required from your team and a preliminary risk assessment.
Right.
If you don't have those detailed plans, you are just comparing apples to oranges. You might choose the co-formulation fixer-upper thinking it will only take 3 months to get to market.
Only to realize their mandatory stability testing takes 6 months alone.
Exactly. Putting your new formula in an incubator to see if it separates over time takes forever.
Okay, let's apply that to a real-world scenario. Let's say you are a new startup. You're looking at these 3 models and you have a massive conflict.
Okay.
You need to prioritize rapid market entry. You need to launch yesterday to capture a trend. But you also absolutely refuse to compromise your brand values. You want clean, organic, vegan ingredients.
That's very common right now.
Building a custom formulation from scratch kills your timeline, but you can't just throw any generic chemical into a bottle. So how do you get to market quickly without abandoning that clean beauty ethos?
It is the classic tension between speed and integrity, for sure.
Yeah.
But the optimal path here, according to the source material, is to leverage that third model.
Packaging customization.
Exactly. But the trick is to execute it using established stock formulas from a mature, highly vetted partner.
Ah, okay.
The guide uses Ingredientsage as an example here. They're a manufacturer that maintains a deep library of stock formulas that already heavily emphasize organic and natural ingredients.
Okay, I see. Taking the move-in ready spec home, but making sure the builder only used eco-friendly, sustainable materials when they poured the foundation.
That's the mechanism, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
By utilizing an existing clean formula, you bypass months of R&D.
Right.
You drastically minimize your development risk and accelerate your time to market. But you still maintain the ability to engage in critical, clean label storytelling.
Because clean beauty isn't just a marketing buzzword anymore.
No, not at all. It requires rigid scientific proof.
Actually, the guide features a really compelling quote about this from Dr. Elena Park, a cosmetic science advisor.
Oh, right, the transparency quote.
Yeah. She notes, transparency in sourcing and testing is no longer optional. It's a competitive differentiator.
It's so true. Brands that can ship their products with complete documentation and third-party verification are the only ones building lasting consumer trust right now.
Right.
If you claim an ingredient is organic, you must possess the paperwork proving the soil it grew in was pesticide-free.
But wait, hold on. Let's unpack the reality of that for a second.
Sure.
If I use a stock formula just to move fast, aren't I essentially just slapping my logo on the exact same foundation or serum that 5 other competing brands are using?
I hear that a lot.
I mean, how am I actually building a unique brand identity if the liquid inside the bottle is literally identical?
Well, that concern makes sense on the surface, but it fundamentally misunderstands how vast the customization parameters actually are within a mature packaging customization model.
Really?
Yeah, a premium private label partner doesn't just print a sticker and call it a day. They provide a comprehensive design-to-label workflow.
Okay, so the customization goes much deeper than just the graphic design on the box.
Considerably deeper. You maintain control over the naming rights, strict labeling controls, specific fragrance profile integrations, and precise color matching for varying skin tones.
Oh, wow.
You could even dictate the use of PCR, that's post-consumer recycled plastics, for your packaging to align with broader sustainability goals.
Okay, that is a lot of control.
But the true differentiator comes down to traceability. A high-end partner provides lot-to-lot traceability, often referred to as DNS, or lot tracking.
Meaning they aren't just giving me a generic, this is organic certificate.
No.
They are tracking the specific batch of jojoba oil used in my specific run of lotion, all the way back to the exact farm and the exact harvest date.
Exactly. That level of granular data is what sets you apart. And this is where digital integration transforms the product.
Let's talk about that.
The guide explores the utilization of QR codes printed directly on the primary packaging. When your customer scans that code with their phone, they aren't redirected to a generic marketing landing page.
Right, nobody wants that.
They are shown the actual ingredient provenance. They see the sourcing data, the batch-level certificates proving cruelty-free status, and the factory's eco-certifications.
See, that flips the entire script on private labeling.
It really does.
Because it used to be this dirty industry secret that brands didn't actually mix their own makeup. Now, flaunting the state-of-the-art sustainable lab that manufactures it for you is the ultimate flex.
Transparency is the marketing.
Yes. When you wrap a stock formula in that level of bespoke digital traceability and custom sustainable packaging, It doesn't feel like a competitor's generic product at all.
Not at all. It feels radically transparent, highly bespoke, and entirely unique to your specific brand ecosystem.
Okay, so transparency works, the QR codes go viral, and your order volume suddenly spikes.
The dream.
But here is the trap. If you haven't planned for that spike, your manufacturer chokes on the volume, and your supply chain snaps.
The nightmare.
Right. So how do you ensure your manufacturing partner can actually keep up when you suddenly need 50,000 units instead of 5,000?
Well, scaling capacity requires ruthless forecasting. You must demand transparent operational metrics from your partner before you ever sign a contract.
So get it in writing early.
You cannot wait until the viral moment happens to ask if they have room on the assembly line.
I would imagine that means digging into the physical realities of their factory floor, right?
Yeah.
I need to know their actual spare capacity, their total monthly output, and like how many physical production lines they have sitting idle versus running at full speed.
Exactly. You also need to heavily scrutinize their lead time variability. Do not just ask a manufacturer for their typical lead time.
Right.
You must ask for the best case, the typical, and the maximum lead times.
Because I can't just accept 4 weeks as an answer. I
No.
need the worst case scenario. If a viral spike hits during their maximum lead time window and it actually takes them 12 weeks to source the raw materials and mix the batch,
You are in trouble.
I am going to have thousands of angry customers demanding refunds on back orders.
And that leads directly into understanding how their MOQs, minimum order quantities, shift as you scale.
Break the mechanics of that down for us, because an MOQ isn't just an arbitrary number a factory picks to annoy founders, right?
Not at all.
It's tied to the physical machinery.
Exactly. An MOQ for a standard basic lipstick tube might only be 5,000 units because the factory already has 1 million of those generic tubes sitting in a warehouse.
Makes sense.
And the filling machine is already calibrated for that specific diameter. But an MOQ for a custom monomaterial recyclable pump, that might jump to 50,000 units.
Wow, why such a huge jump?
Because the factory literally has to halt production, change out the tooling, recalibrate the nozzle pressures, and cast new plastic just for your specific design. You have to know those volume thresholds before you design the packaging.
And the guide places a massive emphasis on supply chain transparency here as well, because it's not just about the factory's ability to mix the product, it's about their ability to actually get the raw materials in the first place.
Exactly.
Like if their sole supplier of organic squalane gets delayed out of port, my entire brand halts.
Yep. Contingency planning is what separates amateur brands from established ones. You have to audit your partner's resilience.
What should we be asking them?
Do they have alternate pre-vetted suppliers for your key active ingredients? What are their safety stock levels? Do they utilize geographic diversification?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, if all of their raw materials flow through a single shipping port and that port experiences a labor strike, your production line goes dark.
So you are stress testing their entire operational web. And I assume you don't just jump blindly from a tiny launch order to a massive scaled-up order hoping their contingency plans hold up.
No, you never scale blindly. The guide outlines a mandatory pilot-to-scale plan.
Okay, what's that?
You run a mid-sized pilot order first. This physically tests the formulation stability at a larger volume because, mixing 10 gallons of serum behaves very differently chemically than mixing 10,000 gallons.
Right.
You test the microbiology, the sensory evaluation, and the transport resilience.
Testing transport resilience is fascinating.
It really is.
It's basically answering the question, will the emulsion separate? Or will the glass packaging shatter if a pallet of this product is vibrating in the back of a semi-truck traveling across the country in freezing temperatures?
Exactly.
You have to establish clear go-no-go criteria during this pilot run before fully committing the capital.
Right. And what's fascinating here is the legal side of this.
Right. So legally, I'm assuming that means I can't just rely on a handshake or a promising pilot run. If I co-develop a formula or if I scale up my volume, I need a contract that protects me if they drop the ball.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, they could just hold my recipe hostage if I try to move to a bigger facility.
The legal reality has to perfectly mirror the operational reality. Contract protections are your only safety net.
What kind of clauses are we talking about?
You must have service level agreements, or SLAs, baked into your contract. These clauses dictate strict quality thresholds and guaranteed maximum lead times.
Okay.
And if you participated in co-developing the formula, you need explicit clauses granting you full ownership of that intellectual property.
And the guide mentions transition rights as well, right?
Yes. That is perhaps the most critical protection. You need clear termination and post-expiration transition rights. A partner's failure to scale or their failure to maintain organic certifications should not kill your brand.
Right.
You need the absolute legal right to take your formulations, your packaging designs, and your ingredient sourcing data and transition to a larger, more capable facility without penalty.
But having the legal right to leave doesn't solve the immediate problem. You still have to pay for the initial scale-up.
That's the hard part.
Right. And if you're only looking at the sticker price of a single bottle to fund that growth, your brand will bleed out before the second batch is even mixed. Scaling capacity isn't just an operational puzzle, it is a massive financial puzzle.
It basically is. Cost modeling is where founders experience the harshest reality check. You cannot build a business model around unit pricing. You have to calculate the total cost of ownership, or TCO.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Modeling these costs is exactly like buying a car.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Right. The unit price, they quote, you say $4 for a tube of mascara. That is just the dealership sticker price on the windshield.
Exactly.
But if you don't calculate the insurance, the gas, the routine maintenance, the new tires, the registration fees,
you are going to go bankrupt just trying to keep that car parked in your driveway.
Exactly.
And those maintenance and registration fees in cosmetic manufacturing are the hidden structural costs of scaling. We're talking about NPI, or new product introduction fees.
Let's explain what that actually pays for, because an NPI fee isn't just some administrative tax, the factory tax on for paperwork.
No, not at all.
It pays for the physical recalibration of the factory machinery. It covers the mechanical engineers who have to spend hours adjusting the filling nozzle pressures and the conveyor belt speeds, so your specific, highly viscous vegan lotion doesn't clog the entire production line.
It is entirely mechanical. And then you have to factor in logistics. As your volume grows, you are paying for massive freight shipments, navigating import duties, and dealing with the friction of moving heavy pallets across international borders.
Right.
And then there is the regulatory and testing burden.
Which is huge. The guide clarifies that even though the FDA in the United States does not pre-approve cosmetics before they hit the market, you, as the brand owner, are still entirely legally responsible for ensuring the product is neither adulterated nor misbranded.
Exactly. If you want to put a label on your bottle claiming the product is hypoallergenic or fragrance-free or non-comedogenic, you have to pay for the clinical documentation and the testing to prove it.
You can't just guess.
No. Robust testing is not just a safety requirement to prevent lawsuits. It is a massive, ongoing line item in your scaling budget.
So what does that testing actually look like in a laboratory setting? Like, what am I actually paying for?
Well, you're paying for extensive stability testing, which means placing your product in specialized environmental chambers that cycle through extreme temperature and humidity ranges to ensure the formula doesn't degrade over a 2-year shelf life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you are paying for microbiological testing, putting samples in petri dishes and incubators to guarantee that harmful bacteria or mold doesn't bloom in the serum after a consumer opens it and uses it for a week.
Yikes.
Right. And you are paying for dermal irritation assessments on human subjects.
And I assume I have to know who is actually performing those tests, right? Is my manufacturing partner doing this in-house in their own lab, or are they sending it out to accredited third-party facilities?
That's a crucial distinction.
Because utilizing third-party labs adds entirely new layers of costs and time delays to the scaling effort. So how do I map all of this out so I don't go bankrupt the moment my order volume doubles?
The guide provides a very specific defense mechanism for this. You must request a sample bill of materials and a highly detailed quote that maps out every single one of these cost components for your first few SKUs.
Get it all laid out.
Right. You need to see the freight estimates, the import duties, the NPI engineering fees, and the specific microbiological testing costs, all itemized before you ever agree to a base unit price.
It's the only mathematical way to avoid catastrophic surprise charges when you try to scale.
Precisely.
It really forces a completely different perspective, doesn't it? You look at a tube of lipstick on a shelf and you just see the color and the branding.
Yeah.
But structurally, it is this incredibly dense, complex web of legal agreements, microbial incubators, port logistics, and digital QR codes.
It is a living ecosystem. Navigating it requires immense discipline and a willingness to look past the marketing.
So let's quickly recap this journey for you, because we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today.
We really have.
First, you have to pick the right engagement model. Deciding whether the custom build, the fixer-upper, or the spec home fits your timeline and risk tolerance.
Right.
If you are a startup that needs to move fast but refuses to compromise on clean beauty claims, leveraging established stock formulas with robust, traceable packaging customization is your absolute best path forward.
For sure. And as that strategy works and your volume grows, you have to preemptively verify those capacity metrics. The spare machinery, the maximum lead times, the alternative raw material suppliers, to ensure you can scale safely without the supply chain fracturing under the pressure.
Exactly. And finally, you have to model the true total cost of ownership. You must look way past the windshield sticker price and account for the mechanical NPI fees, the global logistics, and the rigorous laboratory testing required to back up your claims.
It's essential.
Because if you master those elements, you are building a structural foundation that can actually support a viral moment, rather than collapsing under the weight of it.
The focus on digital traceability we discussed earlier raises a deeply fascinating question about the future of this industry, though.
Oh, I like where this is going. What is the logical conclusion of all this transparency?
Well, we discussed how tech-enabled transparency, where a consumer can scan a QR code to see the exact sourcing data, the lot tracking, the factory's eco-certifications, is becoming the ultimate marketing tool. If supply chains continue to become 100% transparent, if they become fully transparent, and a consumer can scan a code to see exactly which state-of-the-art facility expertly sourced and mixed their favorite clean ingredients.
Wait, I see where you're going with this.
Will the manufacturer eventually become more famous and more trusted than the actual brand name printed on the bottle?
Wow. If the builder is globally renowned for constructing the perfect, eco-friendly spec home, does the name on the mailbox even matter anymore? That is a profound shift in consumer psychology to think about the next time you watch a lipstick sell out in 20 minutes on your feed. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep questioning the mechanics behind the products you love, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next one.